Hello. I'm very keen on GoPros, and I think they're great tools to have with you when you're out and about because of their size and their stability. They are actually, I think, fantastic for that job, and I've used them for some years now when I've been on holiday, etc. Now with the new GoPro 9, I am finding more and more that you've got to be a little bit more careful with the way that you expose the picture. I'm finding that the colour can go a little bit strange if you overexpose, and the auto exposure has this tendency to try and overexpose as well, and that in itself can cause the colour, I think, to go a little bit doolally. I found it very difficult to cure in post as well. I couldn't get the colour back to where I really wanted it, so I now make sure that I'm in flat colour, use the flat colour profile. I'm underexposing by between about a half and one stop. But more importantly, I've still found even when I'm going down half or one stop, I need to click on the screen on the subject to make sure that highlights don't get burnt out. To some extent, you need to really underexpose the picture quite a bit if you want to get everything in without anything burning out and going wishy-washy or nasty. So that's one thing about the exposure, and I think that exposure really affects the colour greatly. The other thing is it's fantastic having this front screen. You really can see what you're framing, and I think that's a great bonus for vloggers and for people taking pictures of themselves like I'm doing now. You can see exactly where you're placed, but the one thing I really wished GoPro had done is to be able to touch that front screen in order to get the exposure correct, because the thing is you do need to get the exposure as right as possible in order to make sure the color is okay, and to do that you need to expose properly. Now if I could just touch the front screen to touch where I want to be exposed correctly, it would be dead easy, but you end up having to fiddle around the back of the camera while pointing at yourself. So the best option I found is to take an exposure off my hand and then lock it. So really the GoPro is no longer just like a point and shoot type camera. You do need to take a little bit more care about how you take your photographs, how you take your videos. Once you get that right, I think it's got the capabilities to look absolutely stunning. It's just finding that sweet spot, I think. So this is a video of me just taking a walk and taking stuff on the way round, trying to find that sweet spot for photographing just on my walk, and see what we get. It's nice to see that the martins are here still. They're probably on their way back to Africa now. This is always a difficult place to film because behind me is very dark, and whenever it's dark like that, it means that the exposure goes up. So I focused on my face, and hopefully my skin isn't burnt out and the whole picture just too bright, but this is a particularly difficult spot. Looks like we've got some new ducks in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One's missing, and 2 brownies on the back there. So one's gone absent again. Oh, there he is. He's over. That's him calling. He's on his own in the middle of the pond. That's the lonesome duck calling at the back. Oh, they're going over to him. See, there are geese in the field over there. If you use the horizon leveling, it's a fantastic thing because it really does hold that camera still. Now the only thing about that, using that, is it can take away a little bit of the detail, and that can be a little bit of a nuisance if you want a really sharp picture. But you've got to choose, do you want that really sharp picture, or would you rather have the picture looking flatter and stiller when you're walking along? So I think the horizon leveling is a great tool, but I don't think I'd leave it on all the time. The GoPro isn't at its best when you've got low light conditions, but one thing about us poor UK people is we don't get that sunny California or Florida type weather. Now GoPros seem to look fantastic in that weather, but in your typical UK weather, the colour can go a little bit skewy and we have to deal with low light. So this is a particularly difficult picture for a GoPro to cope with, having such a small sensor, because I'm in quite low light, patchy light at the moment, and there are a lot of tiny little details like moving leaves going past me, and that can really throw a GoPro absolutely doolally. Oh, that was nice, got a little tune. Now I found in these kinds of conditions where you've got this sort of low light and it's really quite dense with foliage, etc., and it's not particularly bright day, that it's actually better to go against your instincts. I mean, what you would normally do on a dull day is open up the ISO, so you take it up to 800 maybe, or go mad 1600 and put up with the noise. I found the opposite, funnily enough. I set it at 1 to 200, so minimum 100, maximum 200, so there's not a lot of play around there, and I let it go into darkness, and oh, that train again. I let it go into darkness, so let the blacks go to black, and just basically try and make sure that the highlights are still there and they're retained in the shot, and that way it's not too grainy. And you just have to accept the fact that the GoPro isn't going to work fantastically well in low light, but take advantage of the blacks and don't try and bring them up. And as long as you don't try and bring them up, you don't get too bad a picture when you're in a darker situation. And unfortunately in the UK, this is the kind of situation we often do find ourselves in these kind of darker places where the GoPro just doesn't work that well. So I really think the answer is expose again for your highlights. In this case, I've exposed for my skin on my hand, lock the exposure, keep it at 1 to 200 and let the blacks become black if they want to be. In this case, I've exposed for the highlights on the water and locked it there, and just let the blacks go into wherever they're going to go, and then just try and sort it out in post. Still keeping the exposure the same, where I've exposed for the highlights of the water and I've let the green leaves go as dark as they want to be, and again I'll sort that out in post. The other thing about these GoPros is the use of that really wide lens. It means that you can take in such a massive landscape, it's just tremendous. I'm really looking forward to the new lens actually. I have noticed though that the GoPro has a tendency to run quite hot even in our weather at 4K or 5K, so that's another thing you've got to watch with the GoPro. It can get a bit warm. Here's another useful tip as well. I've been having lockups galore with the GoPro, and I thought that the card I was using was particularly good actually. It was a SanDisk Extreme, I think it was, but I noticed that it's not in the list of GoPro cards that are compatible with a GoPro. So that had me thinking, oh, let's look at this card, change it. So I bought another card. I can't remember whether it's an Ultra Pro or something, I don't know. Something really posh anyway. It's one of their recommended ones. Now during the making of this video, I haven't had one lockup. So those lockups and the things that people are getting may well be due to the card, which when I've seen that written on the GoPro site, I've always sort of turned my nose up at it, thinking, oh, you know, they're just telling you to do this to give you something to do, I don't know. But I think it might be true. If your GoPro is locking up, check what card you have in there, because GoPro only have a list of certain cards that should be used with the GoPro. For some reason, that has made a difference to me, and this has been a completely lock-free filming session, which I'm really chuffed about. So I've had the GoPro now for just over a week, and over that week I went from horrified at the GoPro colour profile to it's improving as long as you're willing to do a little bit of work in post. So just as a recap, if this is any use to you and you're thinking of using a GoPro, or you've got one and you're not getting the best out of it maybe, go to flat color, underexposed by half to 1 stop, which is surprising, but even then try and expose for skin tone. And once you get that exposure right, the colors do seem to settle down. I'm using the internal mic because I'm not keen on the media mod until they get the brick working. I'm not going to bother with microphones with the GoPro at the moment. And basically check that card out, because if it's locking up and it's stopping and starting and doing weird things, it is actually possible it is the card, which surprised me. I thought a card is a card, and if it's a good card, the card's going to work. It's not necessarily so with a GoPro, and that surprised me. So although I wasn't keen on the GoPro when I first got it, and I struggled with it for a week, I must admit I had a heck of a struggle with the colour. My feelings for the GoPro are slightly improving with time once I get this colour sorted out, and I'm hoping that the next update will be the one that will fix the audio situation, which I think isn't good. And once that's sorted, I'm back to where my Hero 7 was, with this slightly different colour profile, and that's all there is to it. But once you get used to that, I think it's going to be okay. I hope this was useful to you, and I hope to see you next time. Please consider subscribing, and also ding that bell, then you'll get a notification of my next video. I might get off GoPros next time. I'm going to do a rather nice microphone. Cheers for now.